I know you paid for the $200,000 condo, but we are gifting it to my wife for the grand opening of her boutique." Julian's words fell on me like a sentence. I was standing in the living room of my own home, the same modest house where I had raised him alone for 40 years, and my son looked at me with that cold expression he had perfected since marrying Victoria. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came next, when he added with a smile he didn't even try to hide, "And you are not invited to the party. It would be awkward to have an old housekeeper mingling with the VIP guests." I felt the air leave my lungs. 40 years. 40 years of destroyed knees scrubbing other people's floors, of sleepless nights working in rich families' homes, of hands cracked by bleach and detergents, and my own son was calling me a burden. But then I looked at Caleb, my 16-year-old grandson, who was sitting on the sofa with eyes full of held-back tears. He knew. He always knew. I turned to him and asked with a calmness I didn't even recognize in myself, "Do you want to tell them, or should I?" Julian's face went pale. Victoria frowned, confused, and 3 days later, my daughter-in-law's big day turned into the worst public humiliation she could ever imagine living through. But to understand how we got there, I have to go back to the beginning. I have to go back to that little girl I was, the third of 5 siblings, the one who was always invisible. My mother had her favorites, and I was never on that list. Michael, my older brother, got all the attention because he was the man of the family. My older sisters were pretty and social. I was the middle one, the quiet one, the one who learned from a young age that her value lay in being useful, not in being seen. When I was 12 years old, my mother got me a job cleaning the house of a wealthy family in the neighborhood and told me, "Learn to work hard, because with that face, you're not going to find a husband to support you." Those words stuck in my chest like rusty knives. I learned to clean because I had no alternative. I learned to disappear among the furniture, to exist only when it was necessary to change the sheets or wash the dishes. In my family, I was the shadow that cleaned the house on weekends so my sisters could go out to their parties, the one who washed my father's clothes without anyone saying thank you. When I met Robert, I thought someone finally saw me. He was a mechanic, a man with hard-working hands like mine. We got married when I was 23. My family barely attended the wedding. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse. No fancy dress, no reception. But I was happy. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. 3 years later, Julian was born, and the world filled with colors I had never seen. Robert worked at an auto shop, and I cleaned houses part-time, working for 3 different families during the week. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We lived in a small house that Robert had inherited from his mother, with 2 bedrooms and a backyard where Julian learned to walk. Those were the happiest years of my life. Every night, Robert would come home with grease-stained hands and lift Julian into his arms, making him laugh until the boy ran out of breath. I would watch them from the kitchen and think that I had finally found my place in the world. But happiness, I discovered, is a loan that life gives you and can call back at any moment. Julian was barely 7 years old when Robert died. It was an accident at the shop, negligence by the owner who never faced the consequences. A hydraulic jack failed, a car fell, and in a matter of seconds, my world collapsed. I was left alone with a child, no savings, no formal education, with nothing more than my willingness to work and a pile of debts Robert had left without me knowing. My family didn't show up at the funeral. Michael sent flowers. My sisters sent text messages offering condolences. No one offered real help. No one asked how we were going to survive. It was Susan, my neighbor, who held me up those first few weeks. She watched Julian while I went out knocking on doors, looking for more houses to clean, offering my services in office buildings, anywhere that would take me. I learned that the world has no mercy for poor widows. I learned that a single woman with a child is seen as a problem, not a person. I got a job cleaning an office building downtown during the early mornings. I clocked in at 4 in the morning and left at 9, just in time to wake Julian and take him to school. Then I cleaned 3 houses during the day. My knees swelled so much at night that I had to sleep with my legs elevated. My back hurt so much there were days I couldn't stand up straight. But every dollar I earned was a dollar that fed Julian, that paid for his school supplies, that kept the roof over our heads. My son grew, and I faded. At 30, I looked 40. At 40, I looked 50. The mirror showed me a woman I no longer recognized, slumped shoulders, rough and red hands, tired eyes that had forgotten how to shine. But Julian was okay. Julian had clean clothes, new notebooks, and Nike sneakers. That was the only thing that mattered. I had decided that my son would never feel the abandonment I felt, that he would never be invisible like I was. But there is something I didn't understand until much later. Giving everything to someone doesn't guarantee they will value you. At some point, without me realizing it, Julian began to be ashamed of me. He was 13 when it started. He stopped introducing me to his friends. When they came over to the house, he asked me to stay in my room. He didn't want them to see the stooped woman with wrecked hands who was his mother. One day I heard him talking to a classmate in the living room. "My mom is. She's sick. That's why she doesn't go out much." He was lying. He was lying because I was his embarrassment. That night I cried in silence, my face buried in the pillow so he wouldn't hear me. But the next morning I got up, made his breakfast, and sent him to school with a smile. Because that was what mothers like me did. We swallowed the pain and kept moving forward. The high school years were the worst. Julian started hanging out with kids from wealthy families, kids whose parents were doctors, engineers, business owners. He would come home and look at our peeling walls with contempt. He looked at my cleaning uniforms hanging on the door as if they were evidence of his personal failure. "Why don't we have a car like Richard's family? Why is our house so old? Why aren't you like the other moms?" His words were knives, but I kept cleaning, kept working, kept sacrificing, because in my distorted mind, I thought that if I gave him more, if I worked harder, eventually he would see me. Eventually, he would understand. Eventually, he would love me the way I loved him. How wrong I was. When Julian turned 17, he came home with news he thought would fill me with pride. "Mom, I got accepted to college. I'm going to study business administration." He said it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, as if he were waiting for me to tell him we couldn't afford it. But I already knew. I had been saving every extra penny for months, hiding bills in a shoebox under my bed. I had taken double shifts, cleaned houses on Sundays, worked until my hands bled. "Of course, honey, we're going to make it work." His expression changed. For a second, just for a second, I saw something like surprise on his face, maybe even gratitude, but it disappeared as quickly as it arrived. "Thanks." That was all he said before going to his room. That night I stayed up calculating numbers that didn't add up. Tuition was expensive, books were expensive, transportation was expensive. I needed more work. I always needed more work. That was when I made the decision that would change everything. The house where we lived, the house Robert had left me, was worth something. Not a lot, but something. A real estate agent in the neighborhood had left me his card months ago, telling me that if I ever wanted to sell, he knew buyers. For weeks I struggled with the idea. That house was the only thing I had left of Robert. Every corner held a memory. The backyard where Julian took his first steps. The kitchen where Robert hugged me from behind while I made dinner. The bedroom where we had been happy. But Julian needed a future. Julian needed opportunities I never had. And if selling the house meant giving him those opportunities, then that was what I would do. I called the agent. The house sold in 3 weeks. I received $120,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life, all at once. I told Julian we would move to a smaller apartment, just temporarily, while he studied. I found a tiny place in an old building, a studio with a bathroom and a kitchenette. It was all we needed. Well, it was all I needed. Julian hated that place from the moment he saw it. "We're going to live here? In this dump?" His tone was full of disgust. "It's temporary, son. Just until you graduate. Then we can look for something better." He didn't answer. He just dropped his backpack on the floor and left. That night he didn't come back until past midnight. He smelled like beer and cheap cologne. I didn't ask. I was already learning that questions only generated fights. The college years were a silent torture. I worked 6 days a week, sometimes 7. I cleaned offices, houses, buildings, anything that allowed me to pay Julian's tuition. He studied, but never with the gratitude I expected. Never with an acknowledgement of what it cost. He brought friends to the apartment, and I watched their eyes scan the place with pity. I watched Julian shrink with shame. I heard him lie. We're here temporarily. My mom sold our house to invest in a business. Lies on top of lies. But I didn't correct him, because correcting him meant humiliating him, and I would never do that. Even though he had no problem humiliating me, it was in his junior year of college when he met Victoria. She was studying fashion design at a private university, one of those where the tuition cost more than everything I earned in a year. She was the daughter of a restaurant chain owner. She had perfectly straight hair, manicured nails, clothes that screamed money. And from the first moment I saw her, I knew she despised me. Julian brought her home one Sunday. I had cleaned the apartment until it shined. I had prepared a meal with the best ingredients I could afford. "Nice to meet you, ma'am." Victoria extended her hand, without looking me in the eyes, as if touching me was a sacrifice. During the entire meal, she talked about her family, her trips, the boutique she planned to open someday. Julian looked at her as if she were a prize he had won, as if she were proof that he had escaped his origins. I was invisible at my own table. After that day, Julian started distancing himself even more. He spent entire weekends at Victoria's house. When he came to the apartment, it was only to change clothes or ask for money. "Mom, I need $300 for a class project. Mom, I need $200 for some books. Mom, I need $500 for a presentation." I gave him everything. I always gave him everything, even if it meant I ate only rice for weeks, even if it meant my shoes had holes and I filled them with cardboard, even if it meant I couldn't buy medicine for my back pain. Julian needed to look successful in front of Victoria, and I, fool that I was, thought I was investing in his happiness. He graduated with honors. I was at the ceremony, sitting in the very back, wearing my only decent dress that I had bought at a thrift store. I watched Julian go up on stage, watched him receive his diploma, watched Victoria's family applauding him from the front rows. They had reserved VIP seats. I didn't even know that option existed. After the ceremony, there was a dinner, an expensive dinner at a restaurant I could never afford. Julian approached me in the parking lot. "Mom, the dinner is only for close family and Victoria's parents. It's a formal thing. You wouldn't feel comfortable." He was uninviting me. My own son was uninviting me from his graduation celebration. "It's okay, son. I understand. Go and have fun." I smiled. I always smiled. Even though inside, something broke a little more each time. I went back to the apartment alone. I sat on the edge of my bed and looked at the shoebox where I kept what was left of the money from the house sale. There was $82,000 left. I had managed it carefully for 4 years. Julian didn't know it existed. He thought I was just working month to month, barely surviving. I never told him about the money because I was afraid he would waste it. I was afraid he would see it as something that belonged to him by right. But that night, sitting in the dark, I made a decision. Julian needed a future. He needed a place to live when he married Victoria, because I knew that was inevitable. He needed something that made him feel successful, something that erased the shame of having grown up poor, and I, as always, was going to give it to him. The next morning I went to a real estate agency. "I want to buy a condo for my son." The agent looked me up and down, evaluating my worn clothes, my old shoes. "Do you have a budget in mind?" $80,000 down payment. I can pay the rest in monthly installments." Her expression changed immediately. "Of course, ma'am. Let me show you some options." She took me to see 5 condos. All were nice, modern, in new buildings with security and parking. But there was one that stood out. A condo on the 10th floor, with a view of the city, 2 bedrooms, an open kitchen, sparkling bathrooms. It cost $200,000. With my down payment of $80,000, the monthly payments would be $1,200 for 10 years. It was a lot of money, more than I earned in a month, but I could do it. If I worked more, if I took on more houses, if I sacrificed a little more, just a little more. "I'll take it," I said. The agent smiled. "Excellent choice." The buying process took 3 weeks. 3 weeks during which I said nothing to Julian. I wanted it to be a surprise. I wanted to see his face light up with happiness. I wanted, for once in my life, to be the reason for his joy and not his shame. I signed all the papers myself. The condo remained in my name. The agent suggested putting it directly in Julian's name, but something inside me stopped me. A small voice, almost inaudible, that said, "Wait. Just wait a little longer. Until he matures. Until he learns to value things." I listened to that voice. It was the only smart decision I made in that whole process. When I finally gave him the keys, his reaction wasn't what I expected. We were in the tiny studio where I lived. Julian had come to pick up some things. He had just landed his first job at a marketing firm. He was earning well, much better than I would earn in my entire life. "Son, I have something for you." I took the keys out of my pocket and put them on the table. He looked at them without understanding. "What is this?" "It's a condo. I bought it for you. For when you marry Victoria. So you have a decent place to start your life." The silence that followed was deafening. Julian took the keys slowly, as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You bought a condo? You?" His tone wasn't one of gratitude. It was of disbelief, almost mockery. "Yes, I sold your dad's house years ago. I saved the money. This condo is paid for with that money, and with years of work, it's yours." I expected a hug. I expected tears of thanks. I expected that finally, my son would see me as something more than a burden. But what I received was very different. Julian explored the condo that same day. Victoria came with him. I heard them from the hallway, their excited voices touring every room. "It's perfect. Julian, look at the view. Look at the kitchen. We can put a dining set there. We can get a designer to come decorate it. This is exactly what we needed." Neither of them mentioned my name. Neither of them said thank you. When they came out, Julian looked at me with a strange expression. "Thanks, Mom. This is unexpected." And then he left. That was all the gratitude I received. 2 words. 40 years of sacrifice summarized in 2 empty words. But I told myself it was okay. I convinced myself that Julian just needed time to process the magnitude of the gift. That eventually he would understand what it meant. That eventually he would come looking for me, hug me, tell me he was sorry for all those years of distance. How foolish I was. How incredibly foolish. Months passed. Julian and Victoria moved into the condo. I continued living in the tiny room, working 6 days a week to pay the monthly installments of $1,200 because yes, even though the condo was in my name, I was still paying for it. Julian never offered to help. He never asked how I had paid for it or if I needed help with the mortgage payments. He simply assumed it was his, and that was it. They got married 6 months later. The wedding was in an elegant hall, with more than 200 guests. I didn't help plan it. They didn't ask for my opinion on anything. My invitation arrived by mail, as if I were just another guest, not the groom's mother. On the day of the wedding, I sat at a table in the back, near the restrooms. The table where they put the last-minute guests, the people invited out of obligation. Susan was with me. She had insisted on accompanying me, on buying me a dress for the occasion. "Margaret, you can't go in that old rag. Let me help you." She took me to a store and bought me a pearl-colored dress, simple but elegant. "You paid for that apartment where they're going to live. The least you can do is look good at their wedding." But not even the new dress could hide what I was. An intruder in my own son's life. Throughout the ceremony, Julian didn't look at me once. When it came time for the speeches, he and Victoria went up to the stage holding hands. "We want to thank our parents for all their support." To Victoria's parents, for their generosity and love. To my mother, for being here. That was it. For being here. As if my only achievement was showing up. Victoria gave a long speech about her parents, about how they had supported her in every dream, about how they had taught her the value of hard work. What irony. She had never worked a hard day in her life. But there she was, talking about values, while I, who had worked until I destroyed my body, was barely a footnote. After the wedding, I visited them once, just once. I knocked on the door of the condo I was paying for, and Victoria opened it with a look of annoyance. "Oh, Mrs. Margaret, Julian isn't here. Do you need something?" She spoke as if I were a door-to-door salesperson. "I just wanted to see how you are. See if you need anything. We're fine. Julian is coming home late today. Do you want to leave a message?" She didn't invite me in. I stood in the hallway, looking over her shoulder at the apartment that had cost 40 years of my life. They had put in expensive furniture, modern art, designer lamps, everything looked like it was ripped from a magazine. No message. Just tell him I stopped by to say hello. She closed the door before I finished the sentence. It was then that I really got to know Caleb. My grandson had been born a year after the wedding, but I barely saw him. Julian and Victoria invented excuses every time I asked if I could visit him. That he was sick, that he was sleeping, that it was a bad time. But when Caleb turned 5, something changed. Julian called me on a Tuesday afternoon. "Mom, I need you to watch Caleb this weekend. Victoria and I have a work trip. It was the first time in years he needed me for something." "Of course, honey. Bring him whenever you want." That Friday he arrived with a small boy with huge eyes and a serious expression. "This is Caleb. Behave yourself with your grandmother. Don't give her trouble." And he left. He didn't even come into the apartment. He left the child at the door as if he were a package. The first few minutes were awkward. Caleb looked at me with distrust, as if he didn't know who I was. And he was right to distrust. I was a stranger to him. A stranger who was supposedly his grandmother. "Are you hungry?" He shook his head. "Do you want to watch TV?" Another no. I sat on the sofa, not knowing what to do. And then he spoke. "Why does my dad say you're poor?" The question hit me like a punch. "Because I don't have much money, I guess." "And why don't you have much money?" "Because I gave it all to your dad." Caleb frowned, processing that information with a seriousness improper for a 5-year-old. "That's not fair." "No, honey, it's not. But that's how things are sometimes." During that weekend, Caleb and I connected in a way I never connected with Julian. He was curious, smart, sweet. He asked me questions about everything. About my work, about my life, about why I lived in such a small place. And I answered him with honesty, because lying to him felt like betraying him. When Julian came to pick him up on Sunday, Caleb didn't want to go. "I want to stay with Grandma." "Don't be ridiculous. Let's go." But from that day on, something changed. Caleb started asking to see me. He started calling me on the phone when Julian wasn't looking. He started sneaking out of the condo to visit me. And as he grew, as he became a teenager, he was the only person in that family who treated me like a human being. He was the only one who saw my sacrifice, the only one who understood. And when he was 16, when he could already read and understand documents, I showed him the papers for the condo. I showed him the payment receipts. I showed him the truth that Julian never wanted to see. Caleb didn't say anything that day. He just hugged me. And that hug was worth more than 40 years of indifference. The following years were a repetition of the same painful pattern. I kept working, kept paying the monthly installments on the condo, kept existing on the margins of Julian's life. He had moved up in his company. He was earning well. He drove a new car every 2 years. Victoria spent her time at spas, on trips, in expensive restaurants. They posted photos on social media of their perfect life, their beautiful apartment, their vacations on paradise beaches. They never mentioned who had paid for that apartment. They never mentioned that I was still paying the mortgage month after month. To the world, they were a successful couple who had achieved everything by their own effort. And I was the invisible mother who cleaned houses to survive. Caleb was my only comfort. He came to visit me every week, sometimes twice a week. He told me about school, about his friends, about the problems he had with his parents. Because yes, he had many problems with them. Julian was an absent father, always working or traveling. Victoria was worse. She treated Caleb like an accessory, something to show off in photos but not requiring real attention. The boy grew up alone, raised more by nannies and housekeepers than by his own parents. "Grandma, why is my dad never home?" "Because he works a lot, honey, but he works to give you a good life." Caleb looked at me with those wise eyes he had, eyes that saw more than a child should see. "I don't want stuff. I want him to see me. I want him to talk to me. I want him to be my dad, not a stranger who sleeps in my house." I didn't know how to answer him. Because he was right. Julian had become the same kind of father he had sworn never to be. When Caleb turned 15, things got worse. Victoria decided it was time to open her clothing boutique. She had been talking about it for years, planning, dreaming, designing the perfect business in her head. Julian supported her completely. They spent thousands of dollars on consultants, interior designers, initial inventory. I watched the money flow like water into that project, while I kept living with the minimum, still paying for that condo they considered theirs. One day, Caleb arrived at my house with a worried expression. "Grandma, I need to tell you something. My mom is planning something." "What is it, honey?" I heard a conversation between her and my dad. "They're talking about using the condo as collateral for a loan. They say they need more money for the boutique." I felt my blood run cold. "Use the condo as collateral? But the condo is in my name. They can't do that." "I know, Grandma. That's why I'm worried. I think my dad is going to ask you to transfer it to his name. And I think they're going to pressure you by saying it's only fair after so much time." Caleb knew me too well. He knew I was incapable of denying Julian anything. He knew that if my son came to ask me for that favor, I would probably say yes. "Grandma, please, don't do it. That apartment is the only thing you have. If you put it in my dad's name, you won't have anything. And if they use the apartment as collateral and the business fails, you're going to lose everything." "You're right, honey. You're absolutely right." But the truth was, I didn't know if I would have the strength to refuse when the moment came. The moment came 2 weeks later. Julian appeared at my apartment on a Saturday afternoon. He came alone, without Victoria, which was rare. He hadn't come to visit me alone in years. "Mom, I need to talk to you about something important." "Come in." "Son, do you want coffee?" "No, thanks. This won't take long." He sat on the edge of the sofa, as if the place disgusted him, as if he were afraid of getting dirty. "You see, Victoria and I have been thinking. The condo has been in your name all these years. But we are the ones living there. We are the ones who have maintained it, who have paid the utilities, who have turned it into a home." Every word was a lie. They hadn't paid a dime for that condo. I was still paying the monthly installments. They only paid for electricity, water, and gas. But I didn't interrupt him. I let him continue with his rehearsed speech. "We think it's time for the condo to officially be in our name. It's logical, right? We've already been living there for years. We've already formed a family there. And frankly, Mom, having the property in your name is causing us problems." "What kind of problems?" "Financial problems. We want to make some investments, and we need to use the condo as collateral. But we can't do that if it's in your name." There it was. Exactly what Caleb had predicted. They wanted the condo to gamble it on Victoria's business. They wanted to gamble 40 years of my life as if they were casino chips. "I understand," I said slowly. "And what happens if the investment doesn't go well? What happens if you lose the condo?" Julian laughed, a condescending laugh that made me feel stupid. "That's not going to happen, Mom. Victoria knows what she's doing. Her boutique is going to be a success. But we need this loan to make it reality." "Are you telling me you don't trust us?" It was classic manipulation, turning my legitimate concern into a lack of faith, making me feel guilty for having reasonable doubts. And it almost worked. I almost fell into the lifelong trap of wanting to please him, of wanting to be the mother he needed me to be. But then I thought of Caleb. I thought of his words. "That apartment is the only thing you have." And for the first time in 40 years, I put my needs above Julian's. "I need time to think about it." "Son, it's a big decision. I want to review some documents first." His expression changed immediately. "Time to think about it? Mom, there's nothing to think about. That condo should have been in my name from the beginning. You said yourself you bought it for me. So give it to me officially." "It's not that simple, Julian. There are legal implications, financial implications. I just need a few days to consult with someone." He stood up abruptly. "Consult with who? Who are you going to consult? You who barely finished elementary school? With your maid friends?" The venom in his voice hurt me more than any physical blow, but I didn't back down. "With a lawyer, Julian. I'm going to consult with a lawyer." He stood there in shock. He had never seen me defy him. He had never seen me set boundaries. For 40 years I had been the submissive mother, the one who said yes to everything, the one who sacrificed without complaining. This version of me, this Margaret who demanded time and legal advice, was a stranger to him. "You're crazy," he said finally. "Completely crazy. I'm going to talk to Victoria about this. She is going to be very disappointed in you." And he left, leaving the door open, as if closing it was more effort than I deserved. That night I couldn't sleep. I lay awake, staring at the ceiling, wondering if I had done the right thing, wondering if I was being selfish, if I was being unfair. But then I remembered Susan's words, spoken years ago when I told her I had bought the condo. "Margaret, that son of yours is going to squeeze you until there is nothing left. And when there is nothing left, he's going to toss you aside like a squeezed lemon. Take care of yourself, because no one else is going to do it." She was right. She was always right. The next day, I called Michael, my brother. We hadn't really spoken in years, just superficial greetings at Christmas and birthdays. But I needed help, and he was the only family who might understand. "Michael, I need to talk to you. It's about Julian and the apartment." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. Finally, he spoke. "It's about time you called me, Margaret. I've been waiting for this conversation for years. Come to my house tomorrow. We have a lot to talk about." The conversation with Michael was revealing. He knew more than I thought. "Margaret, I've seen how Julian treats you. I've seen how he ignores you, how he's ashamed of you. I've wanted to tell you something for years, but I knew you wouldn't listen to me as long as you were blinded by maternal love. That apartment you bought, is it still in your name?" "Yes, thank God. Listen to me carefully. Don't transfer anything. Don't sign anything. Julian doesn't deserve that apartment. He doesn't deserve your sacrifice. And if you put it in his name, you're going to lose it. You're going to lose everything." Michael helped me contact a trusted lawyer, a serious man named Mr. Henderson, who reviewed all my documents, all the payment receipts, the entire history of the condo. "Mrs. Margaret, legally this apartment is completely yours. Your son has no right to it unless you decide to transfer it. And frankly, based on what you're telling me, I strongly advise you not to do it. The apartment is your security, your future. Don't give it away." Over the next few weeks, Julian called me several times. Each call was more insistent than the last. Each conversation ended with him losing his patience, raising his voice at me, treating me as if I were a foolish child who didn't understand what was best for the family. "Mom, this is ridiculous. Why do you want that apartment in your name? You don't even live there. We are the ones who need it. We are the ones who have plans, dreams, a future. You're just in the way." His words were knives, but this time they didn't bleed me dry. This time I had something I had never had before. Clarity. Clarity about who my son really was. Clarity about what our bond meant to him. Nothing. I meant nothing to Julian except a source of resources that he felt he had the right to exploit. Victoria also tried her own approach. She invited me for coffee, something she had never done before. We sat in an elegant cafe where a cup of coffee cost more than what I earned in 3 hours of work. She ordered a latte with almond milk and some special syrup. I ordered black coffee. "Mother-in-law, we need to speak woman to woman. Julian is very stressed about this apartment situation. He doesn't understand why you are being so difficult. I don't understand it either, honestly. You said yourself you bought that place for him. Why do you refuse to keep your word now?" Her tone was sweet, but there was steel beneath the honey. She was good at manipulating. I had to admit that. "I'm not refusing anything, Victoria. I'm just being cautious. A condo is a significant asset. It's not something that gets transferred without thinking it through." She leaned forward, her nails perfectly painted coral tapping on the table. "Look, let's be honest. You live in that horrible little room. You work cleaning houses at your age. You have no savings, no pension, nothing. That apartment could be your security. I get it. But think about Caleb. Think about your grandson. If our boutique is a success, and it will be, Caleb is going to have a secured future. He's going to be able to go to the best university. He's going to have opportunities that neither you nor Julian had. Don't you want that for him?" She was using Caleb as a weapon. She was using my own grandson to manipulate me. And the worst part was that she didn't even really care about Caleb. I knew it. Caleb knew it. Everyone knew that Victoria only cared about Victoria. "Caleb already has everything he needs," I replied firmly. "He has a grandmother who loves him. That is more than money can buy." Victoria leaned back, her mask of sweetness fading. "Oh, please, don't come to me with those cheap sentimental speeches. The reality is that you are being selfish. You are clinging to something you don't even use because you are afraid of being left with nothing. But you know what? That fear is exactly what is going to leave you alone. Julian is fed up. Caleb is going to grow up and realize that his grandmother denied him a better future out of pure selfishness. And when that happens, no one is going to be there for you. I stood up. This conversation is over. Thanks for the coffee, Victoria. And I walked out of that cafe with my head held high, although inside I was trembling with rage and fear. Fear, because part of what she said might be true. Fear because maybe, by protecting myself, I was losing my family forever. But Caleb proved me wrong. That same night he appeared at my door with a backpack. "Grandma, can I stay here tonight?" "Of course." "Honey, did something happen?" "I had a fight with my mom. I told her to stop pressuring you about the apartment. I told her it was your apartment, that you paid for it, that they had no right. She got super mad. She told me I was poisoned by you, that I didn't understand how the real world works. I told her the real world was that she was a leech. You shouldn't have done that, Caleb. Now you're going to be in trouble." He looked at me with a determination that reminded me of Robert. "I was a kid when I started visiting you, Grandma. But I'm not a kid anymore. I'm 16. I know what I see. I know how they treat you, and I'm not going to stay silent while they destroy you." That night, while Caleb slept on my sofa bed, I made a decision. I called Mr. Henderson, the lawyer. I want to make sure the condo is completely protected. I want to know what options I have. Mr. Henderson explained everything in detail. "Mrs. Margaret, as long as the apartment is in your name, no one can use it as collateral without your consent. If your son tries to do it somehow, he would be committing fraud. But I need to warn you about something. I've seen cases like this before. Families who forge signatures, who present fraudulent documents. You need to be alert. You need to check your credit regularly. And if you see any strange movement, you have to report it immediately." His words terrified me. Would my own son be capable of something like that? Would Julian forge my signature to steal the apartment from me? A year ago, I would have said no. But now, after everything I had seen, after all the coldness and contempt, I wasn't sure of anything anymore. 2 months of tense silence passed. Julian stopped calling me. Victoria stopped pretending to be kind. I only saw Caleb, who came to visit me more and more frequently, sometimes staying entire days when the fights at his house became unbearable. He told me things that broke my heart. He told me how Victoria and Julian fought constantly about money, about the business, about me. He told me how Victoria had started looking for other ways to get financing for her boutique. He told me how his father came home drunk some nights, frustrated by the pressure. "Grandma, I think they're about to do something bad." "What do you mean, honey?" "I heard my mom talking on the phone with someone. She was saying something about getting the documents anyway, and she won't even notice until it's too late. I think they're going to try to forge your signature." I believed him. Of course I believed him. And that same night I called Mr. Henderson again. The lawyer acted fast. He put alerts on all public records related to the condo. Any attempt to transfer, any document filed, he would be notified immediately. He also helped me draft a legal document, making it clear that I had not authorized any transaction related to the property, and that any signature appearing on future documents must be verified in person with me. "Mrs. Margaret, this is the best we can do preventively. But I need you to understand something. If your son really tries to commit fraud, you will have to be willing to report him. You will have to be willing to face him legally. Will you be able to do that?" I looked at Mr. Henderson's hands, soft hands of a man who worked with papers, not with bleach and brooms. Then I looked at my own hands, destroyed by 40 years of hard labor. "Yes," I said, "I will be able to do it." And then, exactly what Caleb had warned happened. 3 weeks later, Mr. Henderson called me urgently. "Mrs. Margaret, you need to come to my office right now. Documents were filed in public records attempting to transfer your condo to your son's name. They used your signature. It is clearly a forgery, but we need to act immediately to stop the process." I felt like the floor disappeared beneath my feet. My own son had forged my signature to steal from me, to steal the only thing I had after giving him everything. Michael accompanied me to the lawyer's office. When he saw the documents, when he saw the forged signature that didn't even look like mine, his face turned red with fury. "Margaret, This is a crime. This is fraud. You have to report it. You can't let him get away with it. I know, Michael. I know. Mr. Henderson filed a formal complaint. He presented all the evidence of the forgery. He requested an order to halt any transfer. And then he investigated deeper. What he discovered was worse than we imagined. Julian hadn't just tried to transfer the condo. He had used forged documents to put the condo up as collateral for a $200,000 loan. The bank, believing the documents were legitimate, had approved the loan. The money was already in Julian and Victoria's accounts. They had already used it for the boutique. The space was leased, the inventory purchased, the grand opening planned, all built on a lie, all built on a crime. Mrs. Margaret, this is very serious. Your son could go to prison for this. The bank is going to want to recover its money immediately, and when they discover the fraud, they are going to cancel everything. The boutique won't be able to open. Your son is going to lose everything. Are you sure you want to go ahead with this? I thought about 40 years of sacrifice. I thought about destroyed knees, deformed hands, broken back. I thought about Robert's house sold. I thought about nights without eating so Julian could eat. I thought about every humiliation, every snub, every moment I was treated like trash by the son I adored. And I thought about Caleb, my grandson, the only one who had seen me as a human being. Yes, I said with a firm voice. I am sure. Let him face the consequences of what he did. The legal machinery went into motion with a speed that surprised me. Mr. Henderson filed all the necessary documents with the proper authorities. The bank was notified of the fraud, public records were corrected, and a court order was issued freezing all bank accounts related to the fraudulent loan. All this happened in a matter of 48 hours. 48 hours during which Julian and Victoria had no idea of the storm that was about to fall on them. They were moving forward with their plans, oblivious to the reality awaiting them. The grand opening of the boutique was scheduled for the following Saturday. They had sent elegant invitations to more than 100 people. They had hired catering, live music, a professional photographer. They had transformed the space into something out of a fashion magazine, with huge mirrors, perfect lighting, minimalist displays, all paid for with stolen money, all built on my broken back. Caleb kept me informed of every detail. Grandma, my mom is euphoric. She talks of nothing else but the opening. She invited influencers, important people from the fashion industry. She says this is the beginning of her empire. My dad is nervous. I think he knows they did something bad, but he's too deep in to back out now. Did you tell him anything, honey? Do they know we discovered the fraud? No. Grandma, like you asked me, I haven't said anything. But it's hard. It's very hard to look them in the face knowing what they did, knowing they tried to rob you. I know, Caleb. But it's important that they know nothing until the right moment. Justice has to arrive when they least expect it, when it hurts them the most, when they are at their moment of greatest pride. Only then will they understand the magnitude of what they did. Caleb nodded, understanding the lesson without me having to explain it further. The Wednesday before the opening, I received a call I didn't expect. It was Julian. His voice sounded strangely kind, almost sweet. A voice I hadn't heard since he was a child. Mom, I know we've had our differences. I know things have been tense between us. But I want you to know that I love you. You are my mother, and you always will be. And that's why I want to invite you personally to the opening of Victoria's boutique this Saturday. It would be very important for us, for the whole family, if you were there. The cynicism of his words almost made me laugh. Now that he believed he had won, now that he thought he had managed to steal the condo without consequences, now he wanted me there. Now it was important. Now I was part of the family. Do you really want me to go, Julian? After everything that has happened, do you really want me to be there? Of course, Mom. I know we haven't treated you as we should. I know Victoria can be difficult sometimes. But this is a new beginning for us. A new chapter, and we want you to be part of it. Please, come. It means a lot to me. The words were pretty, but I knew the truth. He wanted me there to complete the picture of the perfect family, to show me off as the proud mother supporting her son's success, to use me once again as a decoration in his fake life. I'll be there, I told him. I wouldn't miss it for the world. Excellent. Mom, The opening is at 6 p.m. I'll text you the address. And Mom, thanks. Thanks for understanding. He hung up before I could respond. I stood staring at the phone, feeling a strange mix of sadness and determination. Sadness for the son I could have had and never did. Determination to do what had to be done. The following days passed in a strange calm. It was like being in the eye of a hurricane, knowing the chaos was coming, but enjoying the momentary stillness. Michael came to visit me every day. Margaret, are you sure about this? Once it happens, there is no going back. Julian is going to hate you. Victoria is going to hate you. They probably will never forgive you. I know, Michael. But I can't keep living like this. I can't keep being the silent victim who lets herself be trampled. For the first time in my life, I'm going to stand firm. I'm going to defend myself, even if it means losing my son. My brother hugged me. That hug meant more to me than anything Julian had done in 40 years. I always knew you were stronger than you looked. You were just waiting for the right moment to prove it. Susan also came to see me. She brought wine, cheese, crackers. We made a small toast in my tiny apartment. To Margaret, she said, raising her glass. The woman who finally learned to say no. We drank and laughed. And for the first time in decades, I felt light. I felt free. Nothing had happened yet, but I had already made the decision. I had already chosen my dignity over the toxic love of a son who never valued me. Susan looked at me with bright eyes. You know what's most beautiful about all this? That you're not doing it for revenge. You're doing it for justice, for survival, for self-respect. That's what makes it right. I wish I had your courage when my family treated me like trash. It's never too late, Susan. It's never too late to choose yourself. On Friday, Mr. Henderson called me to confirm the final details. Tomorrow at 5 p.m., 1 hour before the opening, the bank sends representatives to the boutique location. They are going to notify your son about the cancellation of the loan and are going to demand immediate repayment of funds. Since that is impossible, as they spent all the money, they are going to initiate foreclosure proceedings. Simultaneously, justice officials are going to notify them about the fraud complaint. It's all going to happen right before guests arrive. It's going to be public, Mrs. Margaret. It's going to be humiliating for them. Are you prepared for that? I've been preparing for this for 40 years, Mr. Henderson, without knowing it, but I've been preparing. Do what you have to do. The lawyer paused. One last thing. Are you going to attend the opening like your son asked you? I'm going to be there. I want to see their faces when they realize they can no longer trample on me. I want them to know it was me who stopped all this. I want my moment of truth. Saturday dawned with a clear sky. I woke up early, even though I had slept little. I showered, fixed my hair, put on the pearl-colored dress Susan had bought me for Julian's wedding. I applied light makeup, something I rarely did. When I looked in the mirror, I saw a different woman. No longer the stooped and tired housekeeper. I saw someone with dignity, someone with power, someone who was about to reclaim what was hers. Michael came to pick me up at 4 p.m. Susan came with him. The three of us were going together. Mr. Henderson would also come, although he would arrive directly at the venue. This is your day, Margaret, Michael said as he drove. Today you reclaim your life. Today you stop being invisible. We arrived at the boutique location at 5:30. From the outside, it looked impressive. Elegant lights, a modern sign that said Victoria in gold letters, mannequins in the window with clothes that probably cost more than what I earned in a month. There were white and gold balloons tied outside. A champagne-colored carpet extended from the door to the street. Everything was perfect. Everything was a beautiful lie. We stayed in the car, parked on the other side of the street, watching. At 5:45, a black car arrived. Two men in suits got out. One carried a briefcase. The bank, Michael whispered. 3 minutes later, another car arrived. This one was white with official insignias, 2 process servers. I saw them enter the store. From where we were, we could see through the windows. We saw how Julian and Victoria, who were arranging the final details, turned around surprised. We saw how their expressions changed from confusion to concern. We saw the exact moment they were handed the documents. Victoria brought a hand to her mouth. Julian went pale. They started arguing with the men. Desperate gestures, voices we couldn't hear but imagined, full of panic. The bank employees and the officials remained firm, professional, relentless. One of the officials started putting stickers on different parts of the store. Foreclosure stickers. Stickers that said none of that belonged to them anymore. That everything was being confiscated. I saw how Victoria started to cry. I saw how Julian tried to call someone on the phone, his hands shaking. I saw the moment his perfect world, built on fraud and lies, began to crumble. "It's time," I said. "Let's go." The three of us got out of the car and crossed the street. I walked with my head high, flanked by my brother and my best friend. I walked on that champagne carpet, as if I were a queen claiming her throne. And when I walked through that door, when Julian looked up and saw me there, when our eyes met, I knew he finally understood. He finally understood that I was no longer the submissive mother he could exploit without consequences, that I was the owner of my own life, and that justice, although delayed, always arrives. "Mom!" Julian's voice came out as a strangled whisper. "What are you doing here?" I walked toward him slowly, feeling every step like a victory. Behind me, Michael and Susan stayed near the entrance, giving me space but letting me know they were there. Mr. Henderson appeared from a corner of the store where he had been observing the whole process. "You invited me, Julian. You said you wanted me to be here, that it was important to you. So I came. I wouldn't miss it for the world." Victoria wiped the tears from her face, her perfect makeup now running in black lines down her cheeks. "You did this. You reported us." Her voice trembled between fury and disbelief. She couldn't process that the invisible little housekeeper had been capable of destroying her dreams. "I didn't do anything, Victoria. You did it all. I only defended myself. You forged my signature. You committed fraud. You stole. I simply refused to be the silent victim you expected me to be." Julian took a step toward me, his hands extended in a gesture that could have been pleading or threatening. "Mom, please. We can fix this. We can talk. It doesn't have to go this far. I can return the money. I can." "It already went this far, Julian. It went this far the day you decided my signature didn't matter. The day you decided stealing from me was easier than asking for help. The day you decided to build your success on my destruction." One of the officials approached. "Ma'am, are you Margaret Hernandez, the legal owner of the apartment in question?" "Yes, I am." "Do you confirm that you never authorized the use of said property as collateral for any loan?" "I confirm. That signature is not mine. I never gave my consent." The official turned to Julian. "Sir, you are formally notified that an investigation has been initiated for document forgery and bank fraud. You will have to present yourself to the authorities on Monday first thing. Everything acquired with the fraudulent loan is being effectively seized at this moment. This includes the inventory of this store, the furniture, the equipment, and any other asset acquired with those funds. Do you understand the consequences?" Julian could only look at me with an expression I had never seen on him. It was pure hatred, mixed with disbelief. "How could you?" he whispered. "I am your son. I gave you a grandson. I included you in my life. And this is how you pay me?" I laughed. I couldn't help it. A bitter laugh that came from the deepest part of my being. "Included me in your life? You excluded me at every opportunity. You hid me as if I were your shame. You used me as your personal bank. You robbed me, and now, when I finally defend myself, you are the victim?" Victoria intervened, her volume rising. "All this for that damn apartment. An apartment she doesn't even use. An apartment that we turned into a home. We gave it value. We deserved to keep it." "You don't deserve anything. You deserve nothing," I corrected. "Because merit is not measured in expensive decor or in perfect photos for social media. It is measured in honest work, in real sacrifice, in integrity. 3 things you never had. That apartment I paid for with 40 years of destroyed knees scrubbing floors. I paid for it with cracked hands and a broken back. I paid for it selling the only thing I had left of my dead husband. And you thought you could simply take it from me, that I would never react, that I would always be the submissive idiot who lets herself be trampled." At that moment, the first guests started arriving. Elegant people in designer clothes, some carrying gifts wrapped in shiny paper. They stopped at the entrance, confused by the scene they found. The justice officials in their uniforms, the seizure stickers on the walls, Victoria crying with running makeup, Julian paralyzed in the middle of the store, and me, the old housekeeper, standing in the center of it all with my head held high. A woman who looked like an influencer approached hesitantly. "Victoria? What's going on? Is the opening still on?" "There is no opening," I answered before Victoria could speak. "The store is being seized for bank fraud. I suggest you leave. You can read about this in the news next week." The woman recoiled as if I had slapped her. Other guests who had heard started whispering, pulling out their phones. Some took photos, others sent messages. The public humiliation Julian and Victoria feared so much was unfolding before their eyes. Caleb arrived at that moment. He came running, his backpack bouncing on his back. When he saw me, when he saw the whole scene, he stopped panting. "Grandma, you did it. You really did it." I approached him and hugged him. "Of course I did, honey. I told you I wasn't going to let them trample me anymore." Caleb turned to his parents. "Dad, Mom, this is your fault. Only yours. Grandma gave you everything. Everything. And you just took and took until there was nothing left to take. You tried to steal the only thing she had. What did you expect to happen?" Julian pointed at his son with a trembling finger. You told her everything. You helped her destroy us. I gave you a roof, food, education. And this is how you betray me?" Caleb didn't back down. He stood firm. "No, Dad, you betrayed yourself. I only told the truth to someone who deserved to know. Grandma is the only person in this family who actually loves me, the only one who sees me. You just use me for the photos," Victoria screamed, completely losing control. "Ungrateful. After everything we've done for you, all the opportunities we've given you, you didn't do anything." Caleb replied with a calmness that surprised me. "It was Grandma who watched me when you traveled. It was Grandma who listened to me when I had problems. It was Grandma who made me feel like I mattered. You were just there for appearances. And now that the appearances have collapsed, what do you have left?" Guests kept arriving and retreating upon seeing the scene. Some stayed at the entrance watching the spectacle as if it were a TV show. The photographer hired for the event was taking photos compulsively, documenting the destruction instead of the celebration. The musicians arrived with their instruments and left upon seeing there was no celebration to entertain. The catering tried to enter with trays of expensive food and were sent back. Mr. Henderson approached me. "Mrs. Margaret, the officials finished their work. The store is officially seized. Your son and daughter-in-law have to vacate the premises now. They no longer have the right to be here. Do you want to stay and watch, or do you prefer to leave?" "I want to go," I replied. "I've seen what I needed to see." I turned to leave, but Julian grabbed my arm. His grip was desperate, painful. "Mom, please, you can't leave like this. We have to talk. We have to solve this. I can fix things if you give me a chance." "I can." I freed myself from his grip with a sharp jerk. "There is nothing to fix, Julian. You made your decisions. Now live with the consequences. And don't touch me again. You no longer have the right to touch me. You no longer have the right to anything from me." Michael approached, stepping between Julian and me. "You heard your mother. It's over. Let her go." Julian looked at his uncle with eyes injected with hate. You poisoned her against me. You convinced her to do this." "No, Julian. I only gave her the support you never gave her. I gave her the respect you never showed her. I reminded her that she has value beyond what she can give you. That is all." Susan took me gently by the other arm. "Let's go, Margaret. There is nothing here for you anymore." The three of us walked out of the store, leaving behind the chaos Julian and Victoria had created. Caleb came with us. "Grandma, can I go with you? I don't want to be with them right now." "You can come with me whenever you want, honey. My door is always open for you." We walked toward the car while the murmurs of the remaining guests followed us. I heard fragments of conversations. I heard how the story twisted and changed in real time. Some blamed Julian. Others blamed me. Some simply enjoyed the drama. But I no longer cared what people thought. For the first time in 40 years, I only cared what I thought of myself. And for the first time in 40 years, I liked what I saw. The following days were a whirlwind of contradictory emotions. On one hand, I felt a freedom I had never experienced. On the other, there were moments of stinging pain when I thought about what I had lost. Because despite everything, despite the fraud and betrayal, Julian was still my son. The baby I had held in my arms. The boy I had raised alone. The loss of that relationship, however toxic it was, hurt in ways I couldn't explain. But Caleb was with me, and that made everything more bearable. My grandson practically moved into my small apartment. He slept on the sofa bed, but he didn't complain. On the contrary, he seemed happier there, in that tiny space, than in the luxury condo with his parents. Grandma, yesterday my mom called me. She said if I went back to them, they would buy me the car I wanted. They tried to bribe me. And what did you tell her? That I'm not for sale. That you taught me that. I smiled, feeling pride inflate in my chest. That boy was going to be okay. That boy knew what really mattered. The news of the fraud spread quickly. It didn't make national newspapers, but in Julian and Victoria's social circle, it was a monumental scandal. Social media burned with comments, speculations, judgments. Some people defended my son, saying I was a cruel mother who ruined her own family's future. Others defended me, pointing out that no one has the right to steal, not even from their own parents. Susan read me some of the comments when she came to visit. Look at this one. The lady has every right to defend her property. The son is a thief, period. And this other one. What a vengeful mother. She could have resolved this in private. I answered them with honesty. I don't care what people say who don't know my story. I don't care about the opinions of strangers who never scrubbed a floor in their life. The only thing that matters is that I finally put myself first, and that isn't revenge. That is survival. The legal process advanced. Mr. Henderson kept me informed of every step. The bank had initiated legal actions against Julian for fraud. The district attorney was investigating the document forgery case. Julian had hired a lawyer. But according to Mr. Henderson, the evidence was overwhelming. The forged signature didn't even look like mine. Handwriting experts confirmed it was a crude imitation. Julian had been stupid, as well as dishonest. Your son is trying to negotiate, Mr. Henderson told me one day. He wants to reach a settlement. He is willing to sign a document renouncing any future claim on the apartment if you withdraw the criminal complaint. What do you recommend, Mr. Henderson? Legally, it is a reasonable offer. It would save you time and money in court proceedings. But morally, well, that only you can decide. If you withdraw the complaint, he probably won't go to prison. He will have a record, but nothing more. I spent days thinking about that decision. Michael thought I should go ahead with everything, that I should take the case to its ultimate consequences, that Julian deserved to go to prison for what he did. Susan was more compassionate. Margaret, you already won. You already proved your point. You already recovered your power. Do you really need to see him in prison? Will that bring you peace? I don't know, Susan. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants him to suffer as I suffered, but another part just wants to close this chapter and move on. Caleb had his own opinion. Grandma, if my dad goes to prison, my mom is probably going to be left with nothing. And although they don't deserve my compassion after everything they did, I don't want to carry the guilt of having destroyed them completely. They already lost the boutique. They lost their reputation. They lost people's trust. Isn't that enough? His words made me reflect. Caleb was right about something. I wasn't doing this for revenge. It was never about destroying them. It was about protecting myself. In the end, I accepted the deal. Julian signed a legal document renouncing any claim on the condo. He acknowledged in writing that the condo was always mine, that I had paid for it, and that he had no right to the property. In exchange, I withdrew the criminal complaint. The bank would continue with its own legal proceedings. That was out of my control, but at least Julian wouldn't face criminal charges from me. Mr. Henderson had me sign all the papers in his office. Mrs. Margaret, with this you remain completely protected. No one will be able to touch your apartment ever again. What do you plan to do with the property now? I don't know yet, I replied honestly. But it's good to know I have options. That for the first time in my life, I control my own destiny. The lawyer smiled. That is the most important thing. Control over your own life. Many people never achieve it. Weeks passed. Then months. Julian didn't try to contact me. Victoria even less. According to Caleb, They had to move out of the condo to a smaller and cheaper place. Julian was still working, but his reputation was damaged. People at his company knew what had happened. Victoria had tried to get a job, but without her family's money and without her boutique, she was struggling. They lost the new car. They sold many of their expensive things. Basically, they were living the life I had always lived. Tight, difficult, without luxuries. "It's weird, Grandma," Caleb told me while we drank coffee one afternoon. "My parents are more humble now. I don't know if it's genuine or just because they have no choice, but they are different. My dad cooks now. My mom cleans the house herself. It's like they finally understand what hard work is." "Do you think they learned something, honey?" "I want to believe so, but I'm not sure. Sometimes people change because they understand. Other times, they change only because they have no alternative." Meanwhile, I had made an important decision about the condo. I wasn't going to keep it indefinitely. It made no sense to keep a property I didn't use just on principle, so I put it up for sale. The market was good, and I received offers quickly. I sold it for $280,000, $80,000 more than it had cost originally. With that money, I paid all the debts I had. I paid the last few months of the installments that remained. And then I did something I never thought I could do. I bought a small house for myself. Not big, not fancy, but mine. Completely mine. It had 2 bedrooms, a small garden, big windows that let in the light. It was perfect. Caleb helped me move. Michael and Susan came too. Between the 4 of us, we filled that house with laughter, with modest but comfortable furniture, with plants and photographs. Susan hung cream-colored curtains in the living room. Michael assembled the furniture. Caleb painted his room light green because he was going to stay with me permanently. His parents had accepted it was better for him. The first night in my new house, I sat in the garden under the stars. I had a cup of hot tea in my hands. Caleb was inside doing homework. I could hear soft music coming from his room. Everything was quiet. Everything was good. For the first time in 67 years, I felt true peace. Not the resignation I had confused with peace for decades. Not the exhaustion I had called acceptance. But real peace, the peace of knowing I had chosen my dignity, that I had defended my worth, that I had said no when all my life I had said yes. "Grandma," Caleb came out to the garden. "Are you okay?" "I'm perfect, my son." "I was just thinking." "About what?" "About how I spent 40 years building someone else's life, and now, finally, I am building mine." Caleb sat next to me. "Do you regret anything?" "A lot. I regret not defending myself sooner. I regret confusing sacrifice with love. I regret believing that being a mother meant disappearing. But I don't regret what I did in the end, that I would do 1,000 times over." More months passed. Life found a new rhythm. I kept working, but less. I had reduced my load to 3 houses a week instead of 6. I had savings now. I had security. I wasn't rich, but it was enough. Caleb thrived in school. His grades improved. He made new friends. He smiled more. One day he came home with news. "Grandma, my dad wants to see you. He asked me to ask you if you would be willing to talk to him." My heart raced. "What does he want?" "I don't know. He just said he needs to talk to you, that there are things he needs to say." "Do you want to see him?" "I don't know, Caleb. Honestly, I don't know. Part of me wants to hear what he has to say. Another part is afraid of falling back into the same patterns." My grandson took my hand. "You aren't the same person anymore, Grandma. You are no longer the woman who lets herself be trampled. If you decide to see him, it's going to be on your terms, not on his." He was right. I had changed. The fear of Julian, the fear of disappointing him, the fear of losing him, all that was gone. "Tell him I agree to see him, but have him come here, to my house, and have him come alone." Julian arrived on a Sunday afternoon. I saw him from my living room window as he parked an old and worn car, very different from the new vehicles he used to drive. He stayed sitting in the car for several minutes, as if he were gathering courage. Finally, he got out and walked toward my door with slow, unsure steps. When he rang the doorbell, Caleb opened it. "Hi, Dad." "Hi, son." Julian tried to hug him, but Caleb took a step back. "Grandma is in the living room. Go ahead." My son entered my house for the first time. I saw his eyes scanning the place. The simple but comfortable furniture, the plants in the windows, the photographs on the walls, many of them of Caleb and me. There were no photographs of him. That absence spoke more than 1,000 words. Julian looked different. He had lost weight. He had deep circles under his eyes. His clothes, although clean, were worn. It was like looking at an aged and defeated version of the man he had been. "Hi, Mom." "Julian, sit down." He sat on the edge of the sofa, exactly as he had done years ago in my old apartment when he came to ask me to transfer the condo to his name. But now everything was different. Now he had no power. Now I controlled the conversation. "Thanks for seeing me. I wasn't sure you would agree to see me. I almost didn't. But Caleb convinced me to at least listen to what you have to say. So here I am. Speak." Julian took a deep breath, his hands trembling slightly. "I've been going to therapy. The lawyer suggested I do it, and honestly, I needed help processing everything that happened. I've been working on understanding how I came to do what I did, how I came to be the kind of person who steals from his own mother, and what I discovered shames me deeply." I waited in silence. I wasn't going to make this easy for him with words of comfort. If he wanted to say something, he would have to do it without my help. "All my life I saw you as someone weak, Mom. As someone who existed only to serve me. I learned to see you that way because you let yourself be treated that way. Because you never set boundaries. I know you paid for the $200,000 condo, but we are gifting it to my wife for the grand opening of her boutique." Julian's words fell on me like a sentence. I was standing in the living room of my own home, the same modest house where I had raised him alone for 40 years, and my son looked at me with that cold expression he had perfected since marrying Victoria. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst came next, when he added with a smile he didn't even try to hide, "And you are not invited to the party. It would be awkward to have an old housekeeper mingling with the VIP guests." I felt the air leave my lungs. 40 years. 40 years of destroyed knees scrubbing other people's floors, of sleepless nights working in rich families' homes, of hands cracked by bleach and detergents, and my own son was calling me a burden. But then I looked at Caleb, my 16-year-old grandson, who was sitting on the sofa with eyes full of held-back tears. He knew. He always knew. I turned to him and asked with a calmness I didn't even recognize in myself, "Do you want to tell them, or should I?" Julian's face went pale. Victoria frowned, confused, and 3 days later, my daughter-in-law's big day turned into the worst public humiliation she could ever imagine living through. But to understand how we got there, I have to go back to the beginning. I have to go back to that little girl I was, the third of 5 siblings, the one who was always invisible. My mother had her favorites, and I was never on that list. Michael, my older brother, got all the attention because he was the man of the family. My older sisters were pretty and social. I was the middle one, the quiet one, the one who learned from a young age that her value lay in being useful, not in being seen. When I was 12 years old, my mother got me a job cleaning the house of a wealthy family in the neighborhood and told me, "Learn to work hard, because with that face, you're not going to find a husband to support you." Those words stuck in my chest like rusty knives. I learned to clean because I had no alternative. I learned to disappear among the furniture, to exist only when it was necessary to change the sheets or wash the dishes. In my family, I was the shadow that cleaned the house on weekends so my sisters could go out to their parties, the one who washed my father's clothes without anyone saying thank you. When I met Robert, I thought someone finally saw me. He was a mechanic, a man with hard-working hands like mine. We got married when I was 23. My family barely attended the wedding. It was a small ceremony at the courthouse. No fancy dress, no reception. But I was happy. For the first time in my life, someone had chosen me. 3 years later, Julian was born, and the world filled with colors I had never seen. Robert worked at an auto shop, and I cleaned houses part-time, working for 3 different families during the week. We didn't have much, but we had enough. We lived in a small house that Robert had inherited from his mother, with 2 bedrooms and a backyard where Julian learned to walk. Those were the happiest years of my life. Every night, Robert would come home with grease-stained hands and lift Julian into his arms, making him laugh until the boy ran out of breath. I would watch them from the kitchen and think that I had finally found my place in the world. But happiness, I discovered, is a loan that life gives you and can call back at any moment. Julian was barely 7 years old when Robert died. It was an accident at the shop, negligence by the owner who never faced the consequences. A hydraulic jack failed, a car fell, and in a matter of seconds, my world collapsed. I was left alone with a child, no savings, no formal education, with nothing more than my willingness to work and a pile of debts Robert had left without me knowing. My family didn't show up at the funeral. Michael sent flowers. My sisters sent text messages offering condolences. No one offered real help. No one asked how we were going to survive. It was Susan, my neighbor, who held me up those first few weeks. She watched Julian while I went out knocking on doors, looking for more houses to clean, offering my services in office buildings, anywhere that would take me. I learned that the world has no mercy for poor widows. I learned that a single woman with a child is seen as a problem, not a person. I got a job cleaning an office building downtown during the early mornings. I clocked in at 4 in the morning and left at 9, just in time to wake Julian and take him to school. Then I cleaned 3 houses during the day. My knees swelled so much at night that I had to sleep with my legs elevated. My back hurt so much there were days I couldn't stand up straight. But every dollar I earned was a dollar that fed Julian, that paid for his school supplies, that kept the roof over our heads. My son grew, and I faded. At 30, I looked 40. At 40, I looked 50. The mirror showed me a woman I no longer recognized, slumped shoulders, rough and red hands, tired eyes that had forgotten how to shine. But Julian was okay. Julian had clean clothes, new notebooks, and Nike sneakers. That was the only thing that mattered. I had decided that my son would never feel the abandonment I felt, that he would never be invisible like I was. But there is something I didn't understand until much later. Giving everything to someone doesn't guarantee they will value you. At some point, without me realizing it, Julian began to be ashamed of me. He was 13 when it started. He stopped introducing me to his friends. When they came over to the house, he asked me to stay in my room. He didn't want them to see the stooped woman with wrecked hands who was his mother. One day I heard him talking to a classmate in the living room. "My mom is. She's sick. That's why she doesn't go out much." He was lying. He was lying because I was his embarrassment. That night I cried in silence, my face buried in the pillow so he wouldn't hear me. But the next morning I got up, made his breakfast, and sent him to school with a smile. Because that was what mothers like me did. We swallowed the pain and kept moving forward. The high school years were the worst. Julian started hanging out with kids from wealthy families, kids whose parents were doctors, engineers, business owners. He would come home and look at our peeling walls with contempt. He looked at my cleaning uniforms hanging on the door as if they were evidence of his personal failure. "Why don't we have a car like Richard's family? Why is our house so old? Why aren't you like the other moms?" His words were knives, but I kept cleaning, kept working, kept sacrificing, because in my distorted mind, I thought that if I gave him more, if I worked harder, eventually he would see me. Eventually, he would understand. Eventually, he would love me the way I loved him. How wrong I was. When Julian turned 17, he came home with news he thought would fill me with pride. "Mom, I got accepted to college. I'm going to study business administration." He said it with a smile that didn't reach his eyes, as if he were waiting for me to tell him we couldn't afford it. But I already knew. I had been saving every extra penny for months, hiding bills in a shoebox under my bed. I had taken double shifts, cleaned houses on Sundays, worked until my hands bled. "Of course, honey, we're going to make it work." His expression changed. For a second, just for a second, I saw something like surprise on his face, maybe even gratitude, but it disappeared as quickly as it arrived. "Thanks." That was all he said before going to his room. That night I stayed up calculating numbers that didn't add up. Tuition was expensive, books were expensive, transportation was expensive. I needed more work. I always needed more work. That was when I made the decision that would change everything. The house where we lived, the house Robert had left me, was worth something. Not a lot, but something. A real estate agent in the neighborhood had left me his card months ago, telling me that if I ever wanted to sell, he knew buyers. For weeks I struggled with the idea. That house was the only thing I had left of Robert. Every corner held a memory. The backyard where Julian took his first steps. The kitchen where Robert hugged me from behind while I made dinner. The bedroom where we had been happy. But Julian needed a future. Julian needed opportunities I never had. And if selling the house meant giving him those opportunities, then that was what I would do. I called the agent. The house sold in 3 weeks. I received $120,000. It was more money than I had ever seen in my life, all at once. I told Julian we would move to a smaller apartment, just temporarily, while he studied. I found a tiny place in an old building, a studio with a bathroom and a kitchenette. It was all we needed. Well, it was all I needed. Julian hated that place from the moment he saw it.